Welcome back to the Lex Dynamic channel. And yes, you probably noticed that I am wearing the same exact shirt today as I was wearing yesterday. I wear only natural fabrics, and this is 100% pure cotton. It was a cool day yesterday in Colorado. It's kind of a cool day today. So this is what I do. Don't judge me. Let me live. Um, I don't have any music for you today because I'm at my office, my law office today, instead of at home, and I can't really broadcast it. But please check out my music on Apple, Spotify, and all the rest. It streams for free. Don't buy my music. No need to pay for it. And it's also under Lex Dynamic. Okay, let's get right into it. Who is Brendan Carr? Brendan Carr is the FCC, Federal Communications Commission chairman, who is responsible for intimidating, bullying, and harassing ABC and its various affiliates into suspending Jimmy Kimmel. Let's call it what it really is, though. It's a firing. All right, I'm not going to really mess around with anything else. I'll just call it a firing. All right, so let's get into this. Brendan Carr began his career representing corporate clients, including the wireless industry. This is something that's very important to understand on two different levels. He worked at a firm called Wiley Rein LLP, WILEYREIN LLP, which has 260 lawyers. This is a big law firm, corporate through and through. And you have to understand something, that the kind of law that you practice shapes the way that you look at the world. And it's not just the law that you practice, but the kind of law firm that you go to also is a direct reflection of how you view the world. I am a civil rights lawyer. I primarily represent special needs kids, but I do a lot of other civil rights work, including First Amendment work. And that's the only kind of work I ever wanted to do. I never even thought about working for some kind of a corporate firm. But Carr, this cunt, decided to go and work for a corporate firm right away. And normally the reason that you want to work for a corporate firm is because you want to make money. Nobody goes into a corporate firm and says, you know, I'm going there really to represent the rights of the poor and put upon, and I'm going to fight for justice. No, fuck no, you don't give a shit about that. You just want to make money. So let's just get down to that right away. The other thing is that after you have spent much of your career representing as a cunt, representing other corporate cunts, that forms the way that you look at the world, because you become sympathetic to the cunts that you have represented. And this guy was doing a lot of work in the wireless industry, and I would assume that he just became sympathetic to them. It frames how you look at things. And the other thing is also that it creates opportunities later on. Bear something in mind. Nobody works in government forever. So right now, Brendan Carr is the chairman of the FCC, but he's only 46 years old, and he's eventually going to move on. And what he's really looking to do as a lawyer is cash in afterward, because right now he's drawing his government salary. I don't know what that is, a couple $100,000 a year. It's good money, but the real big money comes later on when you as a corporate cunt decide to represent other corporate cunts after you have maximized all of your corporate cunt and FCC cunt connections. Cunt actions. All right. In 2012, he joins the FCC as a staff attorney. And he continues to hold beliefs that are very conservative beliefs. He wrote the FCC chapter for Project 2025. You remember when Trump was being beat up in the media and by the left wing for his connections with Project 2025, this basic blueprint of the right wing to more or less take over America. Well, there's not any more or less. They were trying to take over America. And Trump said, of course, I have nothing to do with this. I don't know anything about this. And a bunch of people actually who were involved in Project 2025 are now actually working in the Trump administration, and Carr is one of those guys. He's also been connected to two other major right-wing organizations called Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society, of course, has been instrumental in getting right-wing judges appointed to the Supreme Court. All 6 of the Supreme Court justices in the SCOTUS right now, or the United States Supreme Court, have been affiliated with the Federalist Society. Now, in Project 2025, what Carr wrote is, quote unquote, the FCC should promote freedom of speech. Yeah, I agree with that, except the reality is that Brendan Carr couldn't give 2 shits less about freedom of speech unless that particular speech actually aligns with his beliefs and those of Donald Trump. And why Carr? Well, because Carr not only subscribed to these right-wing beliefs, but also because he basically was a media whore. He was a guy who made a lot of appearances on Fox News, and he was in social media a lot and parroting whatever Trump had to say. So right off the bat, he was Trump's lapdog. I don't want to hear any of this bullshit, by the way, about, well, you know, it was Brendan Carr who was pushing these stations to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. It wasn't Donald Trump himself. Stop it. Trump is his boss. And Trump knew exactly what he was getting. He went and got Brendan Carr for a reason, because he knew he would be a lapdog. And now Carr is doing Trump's bidding for him. So essentially they're basically aligned. They're birds of a feather. It's just that Trump is the boss and Carr is the puppy. You know, the thing about a guy like Carr is that he knows how to endear himself to power. And that's exactly what he did. He became close with Elon Musk and even posted photos of himself at SpaceX launches. So this is what we have, is just a bunch of corporate people looking for money, trying to run our media. That's who Brendan Carr is. So when Trump nominated him, he said, quote, Commissioner Carr is a warrior for free speech and has fought against the regulatory lawfare that has stifled Americans' freedoms and held back our economy. This is next level stupid shit. It's all bullshit, but this is the typical word salad that Trump engages in. As soon as Brendan Carr takes the job, he immediately turns his back on, you know, his really solid and virtuous commitment to freedom. So what Carr does is he launched investigations into diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, pushing to dismantle them at various broadband companies and at various media companies, actually, in general. And here's the thing. It doesn't really matter how you feel about diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, DEI programs. Here's what does matter. It is no business whatsoever of the government whether private companies choose to have DEI programs or they do not. And it doesn't matter whether it's the left or the right. Nobody from the government should be telling private companies what kind of DEI programs they should or should not have. But that doesn't stop Brendan Carr. Here's the other thing that he immediately begins to do is he slashes regulations on broadband companies. So actually he's loosened things to make it easier for broadband companies to maximize the dollar at the expense of the consumer. Again, these people are corporate whores through and through. In January, and remember, immediately, basically, Brendan Carr starts doing this. He reinstated complaints against CBS, NBC, and ABC that accused the broadcasters of political biases. Notice that he didn't do this with Fox. And Fox, if you recall, paid the $787 million judgment to Dominion settlement to Dominion Voting Systems because of all the bullshit that they had manufactured that they knew was bullshit with respect to stolen elections that never took place. So he reinstates these complaints about political bias. Now, the FCC under Biden had actually dismissed those complaints, saying they violated the First Amendment. And they were right. And again, it doesn't matter whether you like Joe Biden or don't like Joe Biden. And I have my own issues with Joe Biden because he was another corporate whore. But at the same time, Joe Biden and his administration realized that any kind of complaints with respect to political bias against these networks were bullshit. And the thing is, I don't even give a damn whether these networks are biased or not. They have freedom of speech, or at least are supposed to, like everyone else. But apparently Brendan Carr doesn't believe that, because now immediately as he takes the job, he starts cracking down on them. In March, Carr started investigating ABC for its diversity policies, something he said he would scrutinize them for. In April, he accused Comcast, which owns NBC, of news distortion. Well, again, it is not the job of the government to govern DEI practices for private businesses. If you're going to say that you're against regulation and against government power and for business, then we should really have no disagreement with that. But the reality is that the Republican Party has lost any kind of commitment to so-called conservative values and lost that decades ago. With respect to quote-unquote news distortion, again, I don't give a shit. Here's the thing. I don't give a shit that Fox News lies. I know that they lie, but they have the freedom of speech to go ahead and lie, and then it's going to be up to the public to decide whether they want to listen to that bullshit or listen to someone else. And that's the thing. I don't want the government playing the role of referee saying, well, you're lying, you're telling the truth, you get a license, you don't get a license. That's the problem here. See, people are focused too much on what Jimmy Kimmel did or didn't say, on what ABC News did or didn't say, on what CBS did or didn't say. In fact, instead of focusing on the underlying problem here, and what is the underlying problem? The underlying problem is that you don't want the government actually deciding what is going to be broadcast to people. Again, this is what they do in China, in Russia, in banana republics, in the third world. I want freedom of speech. I'm not focused on the content. I'm focused on the process of the freedom in the first place. So then there was a complaint, remember, that Donald Trump had sued 60 Minutes. And he accused them of a bunch of stuff. And the thing is, the lawsuit was complete and utter bullshit. But CBS at that point, which ran 60 Minutes, was part of another company. There were a couple of companies, Paramount and Skydance, two major media companies that were looking to merge. And there was an $8 billion deal. So CBS just wanted things to go away, wanted to make sure that this deal would go through. So they paid Donald Trump $15 million. They shouldn't have paid him shit, and they're gutless turds, and CBS is pathetic, but that's what they paid to Donald Trump. So the reason they did this is because they needed the FCC, which now at this point is run by Brendan Carr, to actually approve this merger between Paramount and Skydance. And 3 weeks after this $15 million settlement, that is exactly what happened. What is this? It's a form of bribery. There is a magical word for this. That word is corruption. So Donald Trump is corrupt, Brendan Carr is corrupt, CBS is corrupt. Donald Trump, of course, is the chief circus master here, the leader of all the corruption. So I don't want to hear him about hear anything about him draining the swamp. He's the fucking swamp master. He's the chief alligator. Fuck, he's a goddamn dinosaur of the swamp. Here's the other problem too. Why are we allowing these major corporations, media conglomerates, to merge? And this is something that has been a problem for years. It wasn't just the Trump administration. Biden allowed it. Obama allowed it. Bush allowed it. And now we have this major media consolidation. So the news that's coming to you is still coming from a narrower amount of sources, which means that you're getting a narrow amount of perspective instead of a wide amount of sources. That's a problem, because in a democracy, there's no way for it to continue to exist without sources of information, whether it's coming through books or radio or television or internet or newspapers or what have you. And the problem is that there's been this media consolidation that's taken place for years. And I'll be talking more about that in the future as well. So now what we have is a situation where Brendan Carr becomes the kingmaker. Oh, well, you want to keep your license? Well, you have to do this, this, and this. Oh, you want your merger? Well, you're going to have to do this, this, and this. Remember that there are ABC affiliates right now that are trying to have a merger as well. This company called Nexstar, which is buying another company called Tegna, and it's about a $6.2 billion deal, and nothing can happen there unless Brendan Carr approves it. And Brendan Carr said, well, sent a pretty clear message that nothing was going to be approved as long as Jimmy Kimmel continued to have his show. Now, what Carr has done actually is made it clear that he doesn't believe in the First Amendment, except insofar as it actually protects Donald Trump. While the FCC cannot actually ban a news network entirely for its content. What Carr has argued is that he can withhold licenses that aren't being used in the public's interest. What the fuck does that mean? First of all, if you withhold a license, you're basically ending a network in terms of using public airwaves. And the other thing is, who gets to decide now what the public interest is? It's Donald Trump, it's Brendan Carr. I don't want government officials actually meddling in this. I don't want them deciding this is in the public interest, this isn't in the public interest, this is in the public interest, this isn't. This is what happens in Putin's Russia. That's why there's no free and independent major media in Russia, because Putin doesn't allow it. And this is exactly what Trump wants to mimic in the United States, and Brendan Carr is helping him do that. Have I mentioned, by the way, that Brendan Carr is a cunt? Now, the thing is that, lawyers are very clever people. As a civil rights lawyer, I know I've come up with a lot of really clever arguments, and other lawyers in my office have done the same thing. And you can manipulate language in a lot of different ways. And that's not a compliment, all right? That speaks to really the limitations of law. And what has happened is that Carr now is trying to define this public interest thing as broadly as he can, but only for his own side. So if someone in the media says something that he doesn't like, well, that's a violation of the public interest, and now we're going to have to look at your license. Well, what about Fox News or Newsmax? No, fuck them, they'll be okay. There are many telecom experts, according to the New York Times article today that I'm pulling this from, who have said that more than any other FCC chairman, Carr has used his position to crack down on speech that he finds offensive. That is not an appropriate role for the FCC chairman. Again, this is a real problem with the FCC in general. I think this agency has far too much power, and this power has been allowed to expand under various administrations. That's something that we really need to reevaluate at some point, because it can be manipulated, and we're seeing it being manipulated right now. The FCC approves major telecom and media deals, vetting mergers for anti-competitive concerns. The agency reviews deals because of the exchange of licenses for public airways and other telecommunication services under its watch. So this is what's happening right now. Essentially, Brendan Carr is going around to these various networks and saying, if you do things the way that I like, then I will let you merge and become even bigger conglomerates, monopolize the media even more. And I don't give a shit that now we're going to have this range of ideas expressed instead of this range of ideas, as long as within this range of ideas I find something that I like. But if I don't, then we're going to have problems. This is authoritarianism. This is dictatorship. This is the end of free media. This is the end of free speech. This is the end of the First Amendment. Stop focusing on Jimmy Kimmel. I don't watch the Jimmy Kimmel show. I've seen some clips on YouTube. It's not something I watch. Stop focusing on ABC News. Forget the content. It's the process here that's important. And for fuck's sake, stop telling me that ABC just woke up and decided on their own that they're going to cancel Jimmy Kimmel. That's not what happened. They were pressured into doing so by Brendan Carr and Donald Trump. That's what we're dealing with right now. Same thing with CBS. Why did they get rid of Stephen Colbert? Because they were pressured to do so by Brendan Carr and Donald Trump. Yes, I know that late night ratings have been slipping actually for a long time. But that was true last year. That was true the year before, and CBS never canceled Stephen Colbert. Nobody canceled Jimmy Kimmel. But now suddenly we're talking about that. Notice that a weenie putz like Jimmy Fallon, who doesn't talk about politics, is still on air. It's not as though his ratings are particularly good either, but he's still on air. Why? Because he hasn't said anything yet that bothers Donald Trump, and Jimmy Fallon's never going to do that because he's a fucking pussy. Well, Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert, for whether you like them or not, at least they were willing to take on power. And that's always been an appropriate role for comedians anyway. You can go back to Lenny Bruce, he did that. George Carlin did that. Richard Pryor did that. We have a long history of comedians doing that, and there have been comedians who made fun of Reagan and Bush and Carter and Obama and the other Bush and everyone else and Gerald Ford. That's just what they do. It's fine. But now we have the most thin-skinned president in the history of the United States who is bothered by any shred of criticism. Anything short but saying that he is the greatest fucking thing since sliced bread means that he has a problem with you. So that's where we are right now. All right, that is it for today. Please like, subscribe, all that shit. Check out my channel on TikTok. That's not a political channel over there. Yeah, I pretend to have sex with inanimate objects. Yeah, you heard that right. I'm kind of a strange individual. And also, check out my music. I'm Lex Dynamic on TikTok, which I like to call TikTok. I'm a 50-year-old who's pretty juvenile. And check out my music on Apple, Spotify, all the rest, blah, blah, blah. I'll have more later. Our country's fucked.